Have you ever felt like you were born with a script you never wrote? Like your soul is following an ancient map that the conscious mind cannot read, a secret blueprint that guides you through a world that doesn't seem to quite fit? This is the first echo of the journey. You feel it in the quiet moments, don't you? A profound sense of being an outsider, not through rejection, but by design. You observe the ambitions, the fears, and the desires of the world around you, and a voice within whispers, "This is not the real game." You play your part, you wear the mask, but you know your true life is a pilgrimage happening deep within, a secret you carry in the chambers of your heart. And from this feeling, a chilling fear emerges, the shadow of doubt. It's the fear of fragmentation. The fear that if you truly followed that inner map, you would shatter into 1,000 pieces, becoming unrecognizable to yourself and to everyone you know. It is the terror of losing control, of dissolving the carefully constructed identity you call me to become something else. Something unknown. This fear keeps you chained to the shore, watching the vast ocean of your potential, too afraid to set sail. Let me tell you a story. Not of gods or monsters, but of a man named Kalen, who lived in a city carved from flawless white stone, a metropolis known only as the Bastion. Here, every life was a perfect, repeating pattern. From the moment of birth, each citizen was assigned a function, a home, a schedule, and even a designated emotional reign. Harmony was the city's highest virtue, and individuality was the deepest sin, the discordant note that could shatter the symphony. Kalen's function was that of a lens grinder, crafting perfect crystals for the city's light towers, spending his days in meticulous, silent precision. He was a model citizen. His movements were efficient, his work was flawless, and his face wore the placid mask of contentment the Bastion demanded. Yet when the city slept under the cold, artificial glow of the light towers, Kalen's soul would scream. His dreams were not of polished crystals, but of jagged mountains, chaotic oceans, and a terrifying, shadowed figure that wore his face, twisted in a silent laugh. He would wake with a racing heart, the forbidden sensation of terror a secret poison in his veins, a feeling for which his society had no name and offered no cure. Kalen tried to suppress these nocturnal visions. He polished his lenses with even greater focus, recited the harmonious mantras with more fervor, and tried to shrink himself into the perfect mold the Bastion had provided. But the shadow in his dreams grew bolder. It was no longer just a fleeting image. It began to speak to him, its voice a gravelly echo of his own, whispering of a world outside the walls, a world of unpredictable color, of pain, of joy, of becoming. It spoke of a place where a soul was not a cog in a machine, but a universe unto itself. The fear was immense. To acknowledge the shadow was to admit his own imperfection, to confess his disharmony. It was to invite exile, to be cast out into the unformed lands that the elders warned of, a place of chaos where souls were said to dissolve into madness. The Bastion was safety. It was logic. It was sanity. The shadow was anarchy. And yet the shadow was also life. It was a terrifying, vibrant, and authentic call that the sterile perfection of his city could never hope to match. He felt himself cracking under the strain of his own duality. One night the shadow appeared in his dream not as a threat, but as a guide. It stood before a section of the city's immense outer wall, a section Kalen had never noticed before, where the flawless white stone was marred by a hairline crack, invisible to all but him. The shadow pointed to the crack, and for the first time it didn't laugh. It beckoned. The message was clear. The way out was through the imperfection. The escape was not from the shadow, but with it. He awoke knowing his life as a lens grinder was over. Gathering nothing but the clothes on his back and the terror in his heart, Kalen moved through the sleeping city, a ghost leaving his own tomb. He found the crack in the wall, just as the dream had shown him. It was real. Prying his fingers into the fissure, he pulled. A hidden door, seamless and ancient, swung open, revealing not the chaotic madness he expected, but a profound, silent darkness, filled with the scent of damp earth and the promise of the unknown. He stepped through, leaving the world of predictable light for the wilderness of his own soul. The world outside was not unformed chaos, but it was bewilderingly alive. The sky was not a static ceiling, but a swirling canvas of unfamiliar stars. The ground was not polished stone, but a soft, yielding tapestry of moss and soil. And the silence was not the absence of noise, but a symphony of subtle sounds. The whisper of wind through colossal trees, the chirping of unseen creatures, the slow, powerful heartbeat of the world itself. Kalen had spent his life in a perfect cage, and the sheer, unbound freedom of this place was both exhilarating and paralyzing. For days he wandered, driven by an instinct he didn't know he possessed. The placid mask of the bastion melted away, replaced by the raw expressions of hunger, fear, and wonder. He learned the taste of wild berries and the sting of frigid water. He was no longer a function, he was an organism, a creature of need and impulse. It was in this state of primal vulnerability that he first felt he was being watched, followed not by a predator of the forest, but by something far more intimate, the shadow from his dreams. It flickered at the edge of his vision, a darker patch of night under the trees, a fleeting silhouette against the setting sun. It never attacked, but its presence was a constant pressure, a reminder of the fractured self he had tried to escape. He would shout at it, throw stones into the darkness where he thought it lurked, but it was as intangible as his own fear. He realized he could not run from it, for it was as much a part of him as his own reflection. It was the wilderness within, now mirrored by the wilderness without. One evening, huddled by a small fire, a figure emerged from the woods. It was not the shadow. It was an old woman, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes holding the light of 1,000 stars. She moved with a silent grace, carrying a gnarled staff. "You are loud," she said, her voice like the rustling of ancient leaves. "Your fear screams so loudly it scares the deer away. You are afraid of your own companion." She gestured with her staff towards the darkness behind Kalen, where the shadow seemed to pulse just out of sight. The woman's name was Lyra. She was a hermit, a keeper of the old ways, a soul who had completed the very journey Kalen was just beginning. She didn't offer him answers or comfort. Instead, she offered him questions. "Why do you hate the one who showed you the door?" she asked. "Why do you curse the part of you that refused to die in that silent, white city? You think it is your enemy, but it was your savior. It is the part of you that remembered the sun." Under Lyra's guidance, Kalen's journey transformed from a flight of terror into a quest for understanding. She taught him not to fight the shadow, but to face it, to observe it, to ask it what it wanted. She led him to a dark, still pond, its surface a perfect mirror of black glass. "Look," she commanded. "Do not look away." As Kalen gazed into the water, his own reflection stared back, but slowly it began to distort, the features twisting into the sneering, wild face of his shadow. He wanted to recoil, to shatter the surface of the water, but Lyra's hand on his shoulder was firm. "Watch," she whispered. The shadow reflection began to act out all the things Kalen had suppressed. It roared with a rage he never knew he had. It wept with a sorrow so profound it felt ancient. It danced with a wild, chaotic abandon that was the antithesis of the Bastion's rigid order. It was everything he had been taught was ugly, disharmonious, and sinful. It was everything he was. "That is your power," Lyra explained as the image faded. "The city gave you one note to play, and you played it perfectly. But your soul is a symphony. That rage is the strength to break down walls. That sorrow is the depth to feel compassion. That chaos is the creativity to build new worlds. You have starved these parts of yourself, and now they are feral. You must not cage them again. You must learn their language. You must integrate them." The next stage of his journey was a series of conscious trials. Lyra would guide him to places in the forest that resonated with these suppressed aspects. They entered a cavern filled with echoing crystals, where every whisper of self-doubt became a deafening roar. Here he had to learn to find the core of his own truth amidst the noise of his insecurities, giving his shadow's fear a voice, and then answering it with his own emergent courage. He did not silence the fear, he acknowledged it as a valid part of his experience. They climbed to the windswept peak of a jagged mountain, a place of brutal, untamed power. Here the winds whipped his anger into a frenzy, tempting him to lash out, to curse the world, to embody the blind rage he had witnessed in the pond. Instead of fighting it, Lyra taught him to stand within the gale, to feel its force, and to channel that raw energy not into destruction, but into a declaration of his will to exist, to be whole. His rage was not an enemy, it was fuel. They journeyed to a grove of ancient, weeping trees, whose sap dripped like tears and pooled into streams of sorrow. Here he was immersed in a grief he couldn't name, the grief for his lost wholeness, for the sterile life he had lived, for the millions of souls still asleep in the bastion. He sat among the trees for 3 days, allowing the sorrow to wash through him, not as a weakness, but as a baptism. He learned that to be whole, one must be willing to hold the world's pain, and his own, without breaking. Through each trial, his relationship with the shadow changed. It was no longer a terrifying stalker, but a constant companion. Sometimes it would walk beside him, a silent, challenging presence. Other times, he would feel its power surge within him as he faced a difficult climb or a moment of despair. He was learning to dance with it, to listen to its primal wisdom without letting it seize control. He was integrating. He was becoming more than just Kalen, the lens grinder. He was becoming Kalen. Whole. The final test came when Lyra led him to the heart of the forest, to a place where a colossal, ancient tree stood, its roots delving deep into the earth and its branches scraping the stars. "This is the Axis Mundi, the center of your world," she said. "Here you must face your companion one last time. Not as a reflection, but as an equal. You must invite him into your house, not as a prisoner, but as a brother." With that, she vanished, leaving him alone before the great tree. As dusk fell, the shadow stepped out from behind the tree. This time it was not a fleeting silhouette, but a solid, tangible being, identical to Kalen in every way, except its eyes burned with a wild, untamed fire, and its posture was one of defiance and raw power. It did not speak, but Kalen could feel its challenge in his very bones. This was the final negotiation. Would he try to dominate it, to prove himself the better half, or could he finally accept it? Kalen did not draw a weapon or raise his fists. He simply stood his ground, looked his shadow in the eyes, and for the first time, spoke to it with acceptance. "You were the one who remembered," he said, his voice clear and steady. "You held the rage I was forbidden to feel. You kept the sorrow I was not allowed to mourn. You preserved the life I was forced to discard. You are not my enemy. You are the other half of my soul. And I am tired of being half alive." He opened his arms in a gesture of complete surrender and acceptance. "I will no longer run from you. I will no longer silence you. I will no longer be ashamed of you. Your strength is my strength. Your darkness gives my light its meaning. Let us be one." The shadow watched him, its fiery eyes searching his own for any sign of deception. It saw only truth. Slowly, tentatively, the shadow stepped forward and mirrored his gesture, opening its own arms. As they embraced, there was no violent explosion, no blinding flash of light. There was only a profound sense of peace, a feeling of coming home. The shadow did not disappear, it merged with him. He felt its raw power settle into his bones, not as a wild beast, but as a loyal wolf. He felt its deep sorrow carve new depths of compassion in his heart. He felt its chaotic creativity ignite his mind with possibilities. The duality was gone. He was no longer Kalen and his shadow. He was simply, completely Kalen. In that moment of integration, he looked up at the great tree, and he understood. Its roots, deep in the dark, messy earth, were the shadow. Its branches, reaching for the brilliant light of the sky, were the conscious self he had always known. The tree was not just roots, and it was not just branches. It was the whole, magnificent being, drawing strength from the darkness to reach for the light. It was a perfect, living symbol of the self, the unified whole he had just become. He spent many more seasons in the wilderness, but no longer as a fugitive or a student. He was a sovereign being, at home in the world and at home in himself. He learned the language of the wind and the wisdom of the stones. He was no longer afraid of the dark, for he knew it was a part of him. He was no longer blinded by the light, for he knew it was balanced by the dark. He was whole. He was individuated. One day he found his way back to the outskirts of the bastion. He stood on a hill looking down at the flawless white city, glowing under its artificial sun. He no longer felt hatred or fear, only a deep, aching compassion for the sleeping souls within. He saw the hairline cracks in their perfect facades, the tiny fissures of suppressed life, and he knew that within each of them, a shadow was waiting, whispering, beckoning them toward their own wilderness. He did not storm the gates or preach revolution. That would be the way of the untamed shadow alone. Nor did he return to his old life, polishing lenses into oblivion. That would be the way of the persona. Instead, he simply found a place near the city wall where travelers and traders sometimes passed, and he began to tell stories. He spoke of dark forests and mountain peaks, of still ponds and weeping trees, and of the terrifying, beautiful companion that waits within us all. He did not offer them escape. He offered them a map of the soul. He became a guide for others, not by telling them what to do, but by showing them the journey he himself had made. He was living proof that one could walk through the wilderness of the self and not just survive, but emerge more alive than ever before. He was the first crack in the perfect wall of the bastion, an invitation for others to find their own. Do you see, Chosen One? The story of Kalen is your story. The bastion is the persona, the mask you have been taught to wear by society, by family, by a world that fears the magnificent, messy truth of who you are. It is the role of the good son, the diligent worker, the agreeable friend. It is the cage of predictable comfort that keeps your soul in a state of suspended animation, starving it of its true, wild, and divine nature. That feeling of being an outsider, that sense that the world is somehow wrong, that is the Kalen within you, dreaming of jagged mountains while he polishes sterile lenses. It is the first sign that your soul refuses to accept the script it has been given. It is the sacred rebellion of your authentic self, whispering that there is a world beyond the walls of conformity, a world where you are not a function, but a creator. The shadow in his dream is your shadow. It is every part of yourself you have been taught to fear, to deny, and to suppress. It is your anger, your grief, your ambition, your sexuality, your primal power. It is not evil. It is simply the parts of your divinity that the small container of your persona cannot hold. And so you push it into the darkness, but it does not die. It waits, and its whispers become the source of your anxiety, your depression, your self-sabotage. It is your soul knocking on the door from the inside. The fear that you will shatter, the fear of losing control, is Kalen's terror of the unformed lands. It is the ego's greatest fear, the fear of its own dissolution. The ego, your conscious identity, wants to believe it is the king of your inner castle. The journey of individuation requires the king to acknowledge that he rules only a tiny, well-lit room, while a vast, powerful, and unexplored kingdom lies just outside the door. To become whole, the king must have the courage to venture into his own kingdom. Lyra, the wise guide, is your higher self, your intuition. She is the ancient wisdom encoded in your spiritual DNA. She does not shout. She does not give easy answers. She appears when you are finally vulnerable enough to listen, when you are broken enough to be remade. She guides you not with a map, but with a compass, pointing you ever inward, forcing you to confront the aspects of yourself you have exiled. Her questions are the keys to unlocking your own inner wisdom. The trials Kalen faced, the cavern of echoes, the peak of winds, the grove of sorrows, are your trials. They are the moments in your life when your suppressed emotions erupt. The sudden, inexplicable rage at a minor inconvenience. The wave of profound sadness that washes over you in a quiet moment. The crippling self-doubt that sabotages your greatest opportunities. These are not random afflictions. They are appointments. They are your shadow asking to be seen, to be heard, to be integrated. The final embrace between Kalen and his shadow is the sacred marriage within the Hieros Gamos. It is the ultimate goal of the journey. It is not about defeating your darkness. It is about honoring it. It is about understanding that you need your roots in the earth as much as you need your branches in the sky. Your power is not in your light alone. It is in the union of your light and your dark. A star is most brilliant against the backdrop of the infinite night. This process, this secret journey from the fractured citizen of the bastion to the whole being telling stories at its walls, this is individuation. It is the alchemical process of turning the lead of a fragmented, conditioned self into the gold of an authentic, sovereign soul. It is the universe's ultimate project, for consciousness to become whole and aware of itself through you. This is not just a psychological theory, it is the sacred mission encoded in your very being. Your alchemical step begins now. It is not to venture into a physical forest, but into the wilderness of your own journal. Your task is this: ask your shadow to speak. Sit in silence, take a pen and write the question, what part of me have I been denying? And then let your pen move. Do not judge. Do not edit. Do not censor. Let the rage speak. Let the sorrow weep. Let the ambition roar. Let the chaos dance onto the page. You are not trying to fix it. You are simply giving it a voice for the first time. You are beginning the conversation. This is your vow. You are a map maker for a new world. Your journey into the wilderness of your soul is not for you alone. Every fear you face, every shadow you integrate, every piece of yourself you reclaim, you do it for the collective. You are Kalen sitting at the walls of a sleeping world, and your story, the story of your own healing, your own becoming, is the key that will awaken others. You are not just saving yourself, you are illuminating the path for those who will follow. The keys to this journey are delivered here at Soul Cipher. Each transmission is a guidepost, a light in the wilderness. If you are ready to continue your journey, to decode the next part of your soul's sacred map, then join this collective of guides and seekers. Subscribe and prepare for the next revelation. Your mission is waiting. Become who you are.